Zach Humphreys is live in the chat. What's up, everyone? 3 people watching. We are kicking this off. What are you guys on right now? Let's get into the plays. Want to do a live stream, get everybody incorporated into this. Not just baseball, not just basketball. It's an exciting weekend. Final Four, women's, men's, baseball, MLB, NBA. Everything is firing this weekend that we're going to be talking about. Picks are out live on the channel. Everybody that's watching, make sure you guys all smash that like button and let's get into it. Gia is live in the chat. I need to be there. So how we looking? What are we on? Yanks are all tied up. Tigers have seemed to continue that rebound. Really formidable schedule, too, with what they've had going on within the Athletics and then the struggling, limping Mets. So probably a lot of people cash on that. But no, I want to talk a little bit about Ncaa. Didn't really touch upon the games tomorrow. Didn't touch upon what we have going on within the women's tonight. I want to talk a little bit about that. I know a lot of people are asking for women's bets, but this is something where we're going to look into some of the graphics. I'm going to pull up some numbers, talk some shop. So let me know down below. Get those comments fired up. Smash that like button. We got 4 people live in this video. But yeah, we got some big ones. Purdue, NC State, Alabama, UConn. I want to go live, talk about that. Get some things off my chest because we're seeing that UConn number starting to drift a little bit, over 11. I said in earlier videos, anytime UConn within 10 points, they're always going to be that team that I take until they prove me wrong that they will not lose in April now. And not just winning, but winning by double digits. So I've been on UConn. I mean, this is the second March Madness where I've picked them outright to win it all. Kind of want to take a cash out. I'm not going to lie. Kind of want to take that cash out within my UConn futures bet just because it hasn't really happened too much where they've repeated. So, who are you guys rocking with? Let me know in the comments. Who do we got going for that outright winner? Do you think my plus 550 ticket is live within UConn? Cashing it out. Can they repeat? That's a big question we have. Obviously, there's a lot of things to talk about. NC State, Purdue. I think it's going to be something where the most interesting thing I'm looking for within these games in the Final Four is, will we have an agenda? All right. And I know it goes past the numbers, goes past statistics. We can throw those all out of the window. Do they want Purdue playing UConn in the championship game? That is the true question. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So, yeah, I don't know, Gia. Why did you Google women's basketball and this came up? I think you just got notified, honestly. I think it was just a notification. So I appreciate you coming on live. I have about 10 people live in the chat, so that's good. We are going to talk a little bit about my initial feelings within the Final Four, and if you guys want to touch base on some of the games going live right now within the major leagues, and as well as some of the NBA games on tonight, we get into that. But I do want to go live. I'm only going to go live for a half hour, so we're going to wrap this one up shortly. Kind of give you an initial look, kind of my first glance. We're going to look at some of the numbers within what we're seeing for the games tomorrow. Pull up the odds jam real quick. We'll show exactly what's going on for the college basketball games. A quick little preview, if you will. Let me pull this up on the screen. I'm going to present. Give me this second. So this is where we're looking into the games tomorrow. That NC State number is 9.5. Alabama plus 12. I do want to talk to you a little bit about what we can see with some down the roads, these prospective matchups, the hypothetical matchups within FanDuel, we'll see what those numbers are. Pull those up on the screen as well. But let's talk about this for the time being. We're looking at the first game, 6:09. We got NC State Purdue. Like I said, I'm not a big Purdue believer. I do think there's going to be a little bit of bias. Unfortunately, I do think that nobody will stop Edie. It's just kind of that story. The ratings would be out of the roof if we could see Klingon from UConn going against Purdue. Whether they covered the 8.5, whether they covered the 9.5, you can find 8.5s out there on Caesars. FanDuel, if you like NC State, giving you that best number, 9.5. But there's something where it comes down to where I stand, right? I talked to you a little bit about UConn and how I'm going to always take UConn if it's under 10 within March, April, the March Madness games, postseason. I'm always taking UConn to win by double digits until they let me down, until they prove me wrong, until somebody covers against UConn. We will be riding with UConn under a 10-point spread. And that's kind of why it's probably sitting, the number's seated a little bit outside of that, at 10.5. So we're going to see where these hypotheticals going to be for the prospective matchups. If we have different matchups, not just what I'm talking about, Purdue and Connecticut. But when we look into this game, there's really no value, in my opinion, taking Purdue, taking favorites, 8.5. But eventually, dude, do the NC State Wolfpack, do they falter? Do they lose steam? Do we see that drop off? Do we see that normalcy within them? I mean, I saw a number out there. I think it was Barstool Sports put it out there that if you put $100 on NC State money line and you pressed every single game that they won outright, you'd be over $200,000 up. I think it was like $240,000 to be exact. Just crazy. So whether that happens, who knows? But that's something where we look into this further. I want to take NC State, man. I really want to bet against Purdue. I just think that they get it done from a perspective. I think Edie's soft. I know he's tall. I know he's a giant. I just can't stomach that loss they had last year to a 16 seed. Some of the misfortune they've had. I mean, resume-wise, regular season performance, Purdue has been the best team in college basketball outside of UConn. They're definitely 1 and 2 in that regard. You look at some of the non-conference wins for Purdue. I mean, they speak for itself. I think they even have actually a better resume than Connecticut. I think Connecticut has performed the best, but I think in terms of actual sheer resume, I do give the edge to Purdue. If we look into this, though, Purdue is where the money's going to be at in terms of just straight up who's going to win this game. Everybody's taking Purdue to win. Will they cover the 8.5? I don't know. Odds on right now, we're seeing more money from an opening number of 9.5 on NC State. Seeing that bet down to 8.5, 9 out there in the market, where we look at NC State getting more of the money over the bets in those betting splits. So that'll be interesting, though. I'm probably not going to play it. If you had to put a gun to my head and make me play one side, I probably would lean towards taking probably the NC State money line in terms of just a little bit of pizza money, probably half unit sprinkle, just in case the magic continues. You just never know. Purdue is liable to choke. I just truly feel that way. Having a more of a big man in terms of physical presence, I think that's something where he could body up Edie. If he gets in foul trouble, NC State's going to lose by 20. But I'm not going to have too much of a play on this, but I would lean towards taking NC State. That's just my perspective. The big one out there is the later game where we look at Bama playing UConn. Another one I was just talking about, I think you see Bama, something very fascinating to me, 16-1. I think you can find out there for who can win the national championship. If somehow Alabama was able to just shoot 60%, beat UConn, run them out of the gym, and UConn has an off night, that's an avenue if you're looking for a little bit more odds-on value, taking Alabama 16-1 to win the national championship before that game goes down. I do see some value in taking that. And, if you want to hedge your bet and get on UConn and get them at 11.5, but like I said, that number's just right outside what we're looking at in terms of value, where I said I would take UConn any time that they were under 10 points. And now we're seeing that number even creep up in some places to UConn minus 12. So it's funny how they do that, right? They know exactly where it needs to be. But in this game, like I said, I lean towards taking Connecticut, a little bit of a sprinkle on Alabama, kind of hedging my futures bet I have with UConn at plus 550 to win national championship. I made back in I think late February, way before, I think it was even before they lost to Creighton back in the regular season. But let's dive into some perspective. Okay. So I want to show, I have to agree with you, Gia, in that one. Purdue definitely appears to be some pretenders. But I do want to share this screen where we look into FanDuel, and we're going to zoom in on some of the prospective hypothetical matchups, right? So right now, courtesy of FanDuel, we're looking at Alabama, Purdue. If they were to face off, you'd see Alabama as a 5.5 point dog. At over 170, that's definitely a little bit juicy right now. Bet that early. I think this game could be played in the 180s even. That's a big number for a total in this game. Also, NC State versus Alabama, we'd see a 4.5 point spread in that game. I would lean towards taking Alabama if they were to face off against NC State. And just full disclosure, I think NC State is plus 1,600 to win the national championship as well. But I do like the Tide. I mean, I don't know if you guys, are just on board with kind of their offensive output, but I do see Alabama having a shot, having a shooter's chance, a puncher's chance. If they take down UConn, I think they can get it done, especially if some unforsaken reason. I mean, if we got an Alabama NC State national championship, CBS, the media personnel, they would be definitely raving over that misfortune. Definitely, I think the ratings, you look into the fact that you'd want to see the likes of, you definitely would like to see the likes of Purdue playing UConn in that final. That's where the money's going to be at. That's where the most viewers are going to be at. And it's one where I think that's where we look into that game, and that would be the game that I would most want to watch as well. Okay. But I do want to share a little bit more about the other two matchups. You got NC State over UConn, and Purdue with UConn. It'd be 5.5 point favorites. UConn would be, and I would definitely be all over. I'm praying this happens because I would definitely see this being bet up to 8. I would be all over UConn minus 5.5 in Purdue within that national championship game. That might actually be one of my biggest college basketball bets of the season if that does actually happen. And if we can get a 5 out there, even more so inclined to take that. I think it's something where I think they would really dot the I in Connecticut and get that one done by 10 points and beyond. I mean, what a historical run, what we're seeing out from, UConn and Danny Hurley. I mean, crazy story. So that's one. NC State, Connecticut. Oh my God, 15.5. The NC State would be an underdog in that contest. So hopefully we don't have to handicap that one. And that is just basically just for some eye candy and looking at it. But I hope we do get that Purdue UConn game. Okay. Also, let's touch upon something that's going on within college basketball. Something that everybody's going to be watching. This is the likes of the women's tonight. UConn is also playing in the Final Four over on that side of the game, right? The women's Final Four. Apologies if nobody really has any interest, but whether you can get down with the women's sports, that's for you guys to decide. I think it's very, very entertaining. I think it's a different game. I actually appreciate the women's game a little bit more than the men's. No dunking, no alley-oops. It's less exciting, but it's more technical. It's more shooting. And that's kind of where we're going to get into some of the talk within UConn and Iowa. Okay, so I'm going to pull it up on FanDuel. Actually, we're going to dive into I'm going to show you the odds on for this women's game. Let me find this one right here. Yeah, so this is where we're looking at for that game. UConn, 3.5 point underdogs going against Iowa. Be interesting to see how this one's officiated as well. Personally, I do like Iowa minus 2.5. That number's crept up to 3.5. I do think it'll be a little bit tense, a little less offense. I can't think of her name right now, but UConn's guard, she is truly fascinating to watch. You really saw that come to light within what we saw within the last game that Connecticut played against USC. Definitely taking over. Some of the fundamentals, I think, really shine through. USC has a lot of flash, the women's side. They do have a lot of, probably maybe the best player in the country not named Caitlin Clark and the freshman, but it's one where you could see they truly got owned by a better, well-rounded ball club. So I do like Iowa -2.5. Now that number's crept up to 3.5. It is juiced down to a 3 though. So you could take Iowa -3 if you're worried about losing that if it falls directly on that number with just some pretty average juice for that spot. But the other one is NC State, South Carolina. And South Carolina, I think at one point you could have bet them +150 to win the national championship. That was a value bet for me. If you look in the futures market, if you guys play the futures market, seeing South Carolina with that value, I mean, they clearly are the best overall squad. Caitlin Clark's the best overall player, but South Carolina is no joke. I think we look at the futures, and you can clearly see what I'm talking about if we go into the futures. And this is just FanDuel's numbers, so there is a lot out there, but this is where you look at the exacta. Or if you see South Carolina over Iowa, you could still get them at +150. So that kind of shows you the handicap, right? They had the futures market pegged back in the regular season, and it's the same as it is right here, right now. That just shows you the respect that goes for South Carolina and the Gamecocks on the women's game. Okay, so that's where I lean. That's a huge number, taking 11.5. If we look into what they're doing in terms of seeing the game played between North Carolina State and South Carolina. So it is kind of interesting to note that North Carolina State and UConn both have a team in the Final Four in both the women's and the men's. That's kind of exciting. I'd like to know here. I'm kind of curious to see how many times that both teams have played each other. So hypothetically, if UConn would beat Iowa and South Carolina loses to NC State for some reason, and we do get a UConn-NC State matchup in both the women's and the men's for the championship round, that would be truly something very of interest. I think that historically, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody out there is a stat junkie, if that's ever been done, I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say. But yeah, I have to understand that's something where we look into what Gia was saying too. We'll go over to the baseball side of things. I do love the Braves tonight. That is a big one. It's too big of a money line as we look into the number. But like, if you want to get on board with taking these run lines, yeah, that's definitely one where we're going to look into. We can look into the Braves. I do like Bobby Miller and the Dodgers. Maybe mix together a little -1.5 action, taking some Dodgers love -1.5, as well as with the Braves over the Diamondbacks -1.5. Let's see what that ticket actually pays. Even like the Phillies on the run line too, -1.5. Yeah, that's some value, +215 on that money line. Don't like to do that too often, but it's a little fun. I think both of those scenarios can happen. I do like me some Bobby Miller in that matchup. I think as well. I think the team total within the Braves, that's something where you can get on board with that as well. So kind of my three favorite plays I got there out in baseball, where I do like the likes of the Dodgers and the Braves a lot. I like both team totals over in those two contests. And also there's something that came out after I did my video where I broke down my picks and my best bets for the Major League card. It's going to be interesting because right now it's 0-0 between the Blue Jays and the Yankees. Kind of crazy freak accident. A New York Yankees executive, I don't know how high up, but his wife died in a car accident. Tree in a storm just fell as she was driving her car and just instantly dead on the scene, I guess. And so if you believe in that stuff, if you want a little edge betting, a little more aspiration and incentive for the Yankees to win one today, outside of the game, but that's where we're 0-0 in the fourth. I hate to use that as an edge. It's unfortunate. Tragic loss is never good. But I do see the fact that, the Yankees have a little bit extra to play for today. So did want to shout that one out for those of you that did not catch that little news bit earlier in the morning. But that about wraps it up. I just wanted to go live for a little bit, talk some shop, talk a little bit about the women's. Like I said, I would lean towards taking Iowa. I think it's something where, it's probably going to be chalky. Everybody's betting Caitlin Clark over her point total, over in the points. I actually do favor taking her assist props. I don't know why they're not beefing those up, but she has really stepped up her assists in terms of average, contrarian to how her numbers have been in the regular season. Towards that last fourth of the season, we really saw those numbers take off, where she's been getting double digits assists in a lot of games. People taking her out, her shot's been off, what have you. It really doesn't matter, but that's kind of what we're looking at within that card. No play in the South Carolina women's game. That number's too far gone. I think you could, possibly even still cover. South Carolina obviously is the class of the women's basketball in that Final Four. So I would not be opposed or surprised to see them get it done. And I definitely would look forward to seeing that South Carolina Iowa matchup in the women's championship. In terms of the men, I told you guys, without seeing some numbers move, the UConn number is just a little bit outside of my comfort zone. In all honesty, I don't like the fact that we're getting that number above 10. Anything under -10, I think even at -10, I would be all over the Huskies. I'm praying, like I said, I'm praying that UConn does meet Purdue, because that UConn -5, -5.5, I just would be jumping on that. The day that number opens up. Truthfully, that's just how I feel about it. And hedging's for gardeners, so I would not be looking to hedge out of my plus 550 UConn futures bet, where I have them winning and going back to back and repeating for a national championship. Hedging's for gardeners, so we would be doubling down in that regard and taking the Huskies to cover that spread in that championship game. Although there probably would be some value in taking the 5.5, even 6, and taking it for half of my stake. Try to just make sure that I lock in some profits in that wager within having UConn plus 550. I think I have 250 on them as well. I think it was 200, and then a $50 bonus bet I put on that wager. So good stuff happening in all sports. Exciting time of the year. My bread and butter, though, coming up, the NBA playoffs. That's probably one of my favorite times of the year. And then we'll have the hockey playoffs. I don't really talk hockey. Haven't started talking hockey yet on the channel. One of my favorite sports to bet, that in the EPL, the European Premier League. Those are two sports that I do get into a lot in my personal betting. But in terms of talking about it on the channel, I haven't went down that route yet. Trying to just start slow and build up an audience sport by sport. So thank you guys for all being part of the channel. Those are my early indications, my early leans, where, like I said, UConn's a little bit outside of the number that I'm comfortable with. So that'll be more of a thing where I want to see if that number creeps down a little bit on game day. Probably lock in that bet tomorrow afternoon, as well as what we see within Purdue and NC State. I do want to lay a little bit on that NC State money line. It's a little bit juicy right now. That's kind of just where I'm at on it. And then possibly even come back on Purdue live if the opportunity presents itself. Kind of how I did with the Tennessee game, right? It's something where that one you really can't handicap, especially because I'm a little bit biased against Purdue. So if you guys are on the Purdue train, the bandwagon for the Boilermakers, probably don't want to listen to me tomorrow, because I do have some bias against them. I just don't believe in them. I don't think they should have got to this point this far. And that's just kind of how I feel about it. So I do want to wrap this up, though. Thank you all for being part of this live stream. Make sure you guys all subscribe down below on your way out, or if you have not already done so. Appreciate you guys. And we'll see you all tomorrow on the channel for more picks on the channel. Have a great day. Cheers.